Great. My name is Thomas E. Ryan, Edward Ryan, and I'm the grandfather of Christina Brown Brazel. Next to me on my other side is my wife, Barbara Engelhardt, her Koenig, Barbara Koenig Engelhardt, and we're going to talk about marriages. I'm married to Barbara, and Chrissy has been married for 25 years to Jeff Brazel, and so I've had two marriages. My wife died in an auto accident. My mother died in an auto accident, but my wife Marilyn died of hepatitis C, and so I was alone, and I married Barbara.
And I was also married before I married Tom. I was married to Ivan Engelhardt. I decided to keep my last name Engelhardt because of my children who live here. And, the long time I've been in Loveland is Barbara Engelhardt. And so we have a lot in common of having, four children each and having a previous marriage. Both very successful marriages.
Right.
Tom and Marilyn's was very wonderful, and mine to Ivan as well.
So we're talking about three successful marriages, but over many years. I'm 90, and Christina is 45.
I'm 43 now.
43.
Yep.
And so that's a big space, and marriage has changed, and very much. Now, Barbara, first marriage to Ivan, and then to me is pretty similar. I mean, we grew up similar, and we believed in a lot of the same things, and marriage was a lot alike then. But marriage is very different today, and I think contrasting. So that the contrast of our marriages and the sameness of our marriages is part of just the times. The times they are changing, and we have a different kind of marriage today.
Plus the fact that each of our first marriages were heavily involved in working and raising children and the busiest times of our lives. So our marriage right now is retirement, and things are so much easier when you don't have to juggle kids and
change diapers and
oh my gosh, so it's just a very different marriage.
So the questions come up: which marriage do you think is best? Well, I know that Barbara and I we're living a different kind of life now because we're retired and don't have children than each of us when we had 4 children at our feet and trying to raise them. That's a big difference. And so, but which one is more happy or successful? They're successful. It's just in different ways.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and I think it was helpful to introduce who we were and what we're going to talk about, the changes in marriage. And here's some pictures. Isn't that nice? Now there's another marriage. They had 9 kids. That's my grandfather, Edward DeVries, and his wife, Sophie DeVries. They came over from Holland and settled in Gurnee, Illinois, near Waukegan, Illinois, and raised 9 kids. And they were dairy farmers. And my grandfather, they couldn't even read and write English when they arrived and had to learn that as adults. And so they had certainly a different marriage than either of ours. So talking about their marriage and ours, Barbara and I, dual marriages, and then Christina Brazel's marriage to Jeff. We'll find out a lot of different things about marriage and how it can work and still be successful, but different.
And then this is
Oh, this
you
is, this was, I don't remember ever seeing this picture before, but he looked so much like my Uncle Joe that it must be Uncle Joe's grandfather or my great grandfather, who was an asthma. And the asthmas uh, came over from Holland, and they were adults and old when they came. They never did learn how to speak English. It was a great sacrifice for them. And their 10 kids still were all successful. And they were glad that they moved. But they died soon after their arrival, and I never knew them. They died before I was born. So they go back about 1900 is when they died. Here's a family picture, and it has the 3 Ryan children. Um, and the baby there is Kathleen, and right next to her is me, and I'm 10 years old. And it doesn't show my red hair, but it's flaming red hair. And of course, all 3 of us kids had red hair. And Phyllis is down below there, standing in front of my mother, her mother, and my father and her father, William Glenn Ryan, and Marie DeVries Ryan. And then over behind me is Uncle Clarence Holdridge and his wife, Edith. And Edith was my father's only sibling. And so we have, that was William Glenn Ryan and Edith Holdridge.
Who's
were,
this one?
I know she was a distant relative.
The one that's to the right of the baby Catherine.
Yeah, right.
Kathleen.
I don't know who she is. I know. I'll probably think of it later. My memory isn't that good. But she was just a visiting cousin. And as I say, now my father remarried after my mother was killed in an auto accident, and he married Ruth Ryan. And so this was at Immaculate Conception Church, the same church where Marilyn and I were married in Waukegan. And they got married in their 60s at retirement, and went off to Florida to live. And so he was born in.
Wasn't that her first marriage?
No, yes, it was her first marriage. She was a single school teacher, taught first grade, and my dad. They were both very Catholic, and they both.
So
met,
is
I think, at the
this a
Catholic
picture?
Church.
Is this a picture of William Glenn and Ruth? Is that what this is?
Yes.
Yes, that's Ruth, and they're just outside the Catholic Church.
All right, so
There's
this is a picture.
Marilyn.
Now we're getting into pictures of your wedding with Marilyn. So this is you cutting
Right.
the cake, yeah?
And okay, there I am still with flaming red hair and Marilyn. And we got married late in life because she wanted to finish nurse's training. And if she got married, they'd kick her out. So we got married 2 weeks after she graduated for nurse's training. So that was marriage then. Well, the nurse's training figured if somebody got married while they're in nurse's training, they were going to have a baby and they'd have to quit anyway. So they might as well just kick them out. And she stayed. And while she was in nurse's training, much of that time I was in the Army, far away in Alaska. And as soon as she finished and I got back to Illinois, we got married, and we had a marriage that lasted about 55 years, and she died of hepatitis C. But we raised
Very
okay.
reminiscent of Jeff and I's marriage. I had to wait for me to graduate high school so he could come back from the Army from Germany, and we could get married also in Illinois. So very, very similar.
Right. But yeah, here's Marilyn and I I think at the wedding.
Mhm.
And yeah, I didn't have a tuxedo. We didn't have much money, and it was a very simple wedding. And so was Chrissy and Jeff's wedding.
Yep.
Yeah, here's the two of us out in front of. I married the girl next door, so this is right. We're standing between the two houses on Cornelia Avenue in Waukegan, Illinois. After the wedding, I guess I did. I had a kind of a tuxedo on there.
That must have been after the wedding.
Yeah,
that other
the other
picture.
picture was after the wedding. But of course, they had bridesmaids and all dressed up. So
1955.
1953 is when we got
55.
married. Yeah,
1955. Yeah, August 13,
55,
1955.
right. Okay. And then we were married then for 55 years. After
So here's a
that.
picture of you in, I believe, in Cozumel.
Oh my. Now that's in my hair shows up in color.
There, now we got color pictures.
Yes, right. Color pictures have arrived in Cancun.
So then then you had 4 children, and they have all had fairly, well, not fairly, very successful marriages. Some of them more than once. But let's just get to the first one. So we got Kevin as your oldest child, and Kevin with Maki and Henri and Julia.
Right. What a different marriage of
Yeah.
our 4 children. Kevin, the oldest, he had red hair as well. And he married Maki Mizuno. So that's very different. Marrying all across the ocean. He went to Japan after college and met Maki, and they've had a very successful marriage with 2 daughters, Henri and Julia. And they named their first daughter Julia, but that was a name very hard for Japanese to pronounce. So they were more careful with Henri. And apparently, Henri is a name is more Japanese and easier for the Japanese to pronounce.
Yes, and I understand the name Ryan was hard to pronounce over in Japan. So Henri Ryan, and they called each other by their last names over there, from what I understand. And Henri actually in the United States does not go by Henri. She goes by Nicole, like her middle name.
Yes,
So
her middle
No,
name.
she's the
Yeah.
little one that.
yeah,
That
yeah,
Maki's
she's the little one, and now she's
have red
graduated. She's
hair.
got a master's degree.
not really. They-
She's
The girls didn't have red hair. I think red hair is a recessive gene, and black hair among Japanese is very dominant. There are very few Japanese that aren't
Looks
dark.
pretty
black
blonde
hair.
right there.
Looks, I think it's just a light.
Yeah.
So then we have Dan, who also has red hair,
Yeah,
and was married to,
yes. My son Dan, and he had red hair as well.
yep,
Married to Cheryl.
And Cheryl,
Dan
right?
and Cheryl.
Now,
And
then
this is Sasha, and then we have Sheridan.
Sasha is Dan's stepdaughter,
Right.
because Cheryl had been married before and had Sasha and got divorced. Dan was married before,
Mhm.
and he didn't have any children by his first wife, but with
He did have a stepdaughter, though. He had a stepdaughter with his first wife.
yes,
and
Sasha is the
Yep.
stepdaughter. And then they had one child between Cheryl and Dan. And so they decided to name him Shara, as in Cheryl, Sheridan. And so he is a combination of the two names, and he's the little one on the, he's
he's the youngest grandchild, right? He's your youngest grandchild?
youngest grandchild, yes, right. And so yeah, they live in near Denver, Colorado, in Wheat Ridge.
So then this
Yeah.
is
Oh
Marie,
my
who's
gosh.
third. So you have Marie and her husband Tony after my dad, Alan Brown. So Tony was my stepdad, and this is me and Ryan. So this is our family portrait of us
Oh, sweet.
early on while we were young. So Marie,
Uh-huh.
Tony, Chrissy, and Ryan.
Ryan and Christina and Marie and Tony. Now, Tony is a stepfather to both you kids, and you don't mind using the word stepfather. It's very clear he was not the birth father, but he's a stepfather. Okay, but with us, uh, we don't. That word step, I think, is a hard one. Um, Barbara's children, for example, four of them, they're all adults. None of them call me stepfather. I don't think they refer to me as stepfathers. That's what I am. They don't even refer to me as dad or father because they love their own father so much that if it would be disloyal to him to call me
Ah,
father,
I,
even
I would object to
though.
that. I would object to that. I don't think that's being disloyal. I think it is same thing with like Barbara. I call you Barbara, right?
No.
So I don't call you grandma. It's
That's
not
right.
disloyal.
Right.
It's
But
just I don't want to
you
call you
kids,
step grandma Barbara. You know what I mean?
step grandma, right?
No.
I think you
That
kids
seems
don't
weird,
mind
right?
calling her mom. You're comfortable with that.
Right?
You don't think that's disloyal to Marilyn,
Nope.
but her children do. I'm sure that's why they don't know quite what to call me.
Well,
They call me Tom when they have to.
and that is
Yep.
also true of my daughter-in-law, Jenny, who is younger than my other daughter-in-law, Maureen, who's married to David. She always called me mom, and Jenny always called me Barbara. So
Right.
it's a personal preference,
Mhm.
Right.
and I respect I
Oh, yeah.
respect both ways of
I
doing it.
don't think it's ever being disloyal. It's not trying to be disloyal to anybody. It's not trying to be disrespectful to anybody. It's just like
No.
what you're comfortable with. And if, you know,
I just brought it up as a
yeah,
blended families are
right.
common as we're showing all kinds of blends, but we
Absolutely.
sometimes have a little difficulty how we describe them. No, I don't resent it or anything.
Yeah.
It's
You
just
can't,
pointing out a
it
difference.
is. It's just how it is. And that's how it kind of comes out with the blended family thing. That's what I was wanting to kind of touch on a little bit, that it's not disrespectful either way. Like everybody just is doing what they're comfortable with, and everybody has to be comfortable with that. So I think that is a perfect way to describe it. So, all right. So this is my stepdad, Tony, and he knows that, and that's fine. And I still have my dad, Alan, and I call him dad because he's my dad. You know what I mean? And I also had a stepdad, a third stepdad, Mike. So I never called him anything other than Mike. So that
Yep.
it's just what you're comfortable with, and it's not
But we,
disrespectful, I think, on anybody. And then here is Ginger and Kit, and they've been together since college, and they got married after college, after they graduated, right? And then we have Ginger, Kit, and Zach and Kelly. So this would be your youngest kid that had a marriage, and your grandkids as well.
Ginger, her real name is Virginia, but we named her after her grandmother, Virginia Halteman, and Grandma Haldeman lived with us, so it was a little confusing. So somehow we started calling Virginia Ginger.
Yep.
So the family calls her Ginger, but her name is really Virginia. Virginia Ryan. So they had a more typical family. They've been married for 30 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And they're very, long time marriage, and it's more what you call normal, but there's no such thing as a normal marriage anymore.
Was that taken from
Right.
over in Tennessee?
I think in Tennessee, they lived in Tennessee.
Yeah.
They both graduated from college and couldn't get jobs. It was in a recession. And finally, Kit got a job as an engineer in Nashville, Tennessee. And so they moved down there. And so those are the only two of my grandchildren that were born south of the Mason-Dixon line in Tennessee. In fact, they were born at a hospital right near Andrew Jackson's home. And Andrew Jackson, President of the United States, was from Tennessee. And so they don't have a Southern accent because they moved away from there shortly after, while the kids were still small. But they didn't move very much compared to the rest of us. Their marriage has been long and solid. They have exactly 2 kids. That's was kind of in their day, that was the most. And in the days of birth control, you could determine how many kids you wanted and almost an age and when they'd be born. And that was impossible.
Your mother was one of 9 children. My mother was one of 10 children. That shows how different
Yeah.
it is now.
Well, they could use the kids to work on the farm where kids are kind of a burden now.
Oh my
I
gosh.
agree. That's why we didn't have any.
Yeah, yeah.
This is just a collection of blended family here. So we have Dan Ryan,
Oh,
we have Jeff Brazel, we have Christina Brazel at the time, and then Ginger, we have Sasha, and then we have Kelly. So just
So
everybody.
the
Is Christina, is that you?
yeah,
That's me.
yeah, dyed her hair.
Oh my gosh. I would not recognize either one of you, either you or Jeff.
This is
Or
me, Jeff.
Ginger
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, Ginger.
Now Dan with the red hair, yeah,
And
he's
now who are the 2 kids again?
This is Sasha, and this
Okay.
is Kelly.
Kelly. Okay.
yeah, Kelly, yeah. No, Kelly's mother and father aren't there, and Sasha's neither too.
So this is Kelly, Ginger, Kit, and Zach sitting on the couch in Loveland, I believe. And another picture of the 4 of them, younger. I'm not sure where this picture was taken, but this is
Looks
Kit
like
and
it's
Ginger.
Loveland with mountains back there.
Yeah.
I don't think so though.
Kelly looks Amish in this picture, yeah.
She does.
And then we have Sasha and Sheridan. So these are their step brother and sister, or half brother and sister, not step.
Yeah, brother and sister.
So
yeah.
yep. So Sasha is Dan's stepdaughter. Sheridan is birth son, right? So they're half brother and sister.
Yeah, Sheridan. Cheryl and Dan have a child named Sheridan. And so that's
And
It's
then
an
here's a
easy
picture
name.
of Marilyn and Tom with Sheridan. So you can see
Right.
his leg here.
Oh, yeah.
and
He
there's
was
the
very
dog.
young. I think this was before they ever got any prosthetics for him for his leg.
Yeah.
But he's the
We
youngest.
did a lot of camp. Yeah.
He's the
This
youngest.
is after we moved to Colorado in retirement, and the dog Lindsay was picked out by Ginger and her grandmother.
Is that Lindsay?
Yeah, that's
I don't think
Lindsay.
I've
That
ever
is
seen-
Lindsay. And
Maybe
yeah.
And
Picked her out.
and they picked the dog out. I think they paid $50 for the dog. It's a mix. We didn't even know what breed it was.
Nope.
was
She
kind
was
of
a
an
Grandpa.
Australian Shepherd.
Do you remember? She was called a God's special puppy.
Oh,
Remember?
Very special puppy.
God's special puppies. And we went and we looked and we picked her out and we brought her home.
So we didn't have pets. We had kids. And but that was the first pet I think I ever had was Lindsay, and I was against getting Lindsay, but she ended up being. I spent more time with her than anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, she ended up being your best friend, I believe.
Right.
So here's a picture of Sheridan and Cheryl and Dan, and their puppy, I believe his name was Ricky.
They've had a series of dogs. Ricky, as they would go to the dog pound and take a dog that had been abandoned or was going to be put to sleep, and they would adopt a dog. And so they got some strange breeds, mixed breeds that way, but they've had a dog since I think they got married, some dog or other, and they're Sheridan. So
here's a picture. I believe this is Zach, Sasha, Kelly, Maki, and Kevin on a boat. It
yeah,
looks
this
like.
is in right near our home. We lived on Lake Loveland. No, not Lake
Boyd
Loveland,
Lake.
Boyd Lake.
Boyd Lake,
And,
yeah.
and so they're out there in the lake, and we camped there and went riding on the lake. So here's
This
now
is
Kevin's
Julia.
family with 2 daughters. Again, a very Japanese family. It's a crowded nation, and they have a problem now. They got too many old people and no young people take their place because people used birth control to hold down the number of children. They had exactly 2, and Dan only had 1. So, and Cheryl had 2 children, but they.
So that's
Ginger
that's,
and Ken only had 2. So.
Sasha down there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sasha.
so this is Julia right here with Kevin and Maki. So she was just newly born. So there's that family. And then we have Dan and Cheryl and Sasha. So this is before Sheridan.
Right, and before Henri.
And the
Before
2 brothers,
Henri, yes.
2
The
brothers, Dan and Kevin. So they're only a year apart, not even a year apart. So we had one after the other. Kevin was born 9 months and 2 weeks after we were married, and Dan was born less than a year later. So we had 4 kids, and we would have had more because we were Catholics, and we didn't use birth control or they weren't available. So Marilyn had, I think, 5 miscarriages due to a defective thyroid that she had. Her thyroid would act up and would cause the miscarriages. At least that's what they figured was happening. Or we would have had quite a large family.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine. So this is everybody. You and Marilyn, and then your 4 kids here in the background. So we have Kevin, Dan, Ginger, Marie, and me, the oldest grandchild. Ryan, the second oldest grandchild. We have Kelly, the 3rd one, Zach, Julia, Henri, Sheridan, Sasha, and then of course Jeff. He was in there at that point, so he interjected. He probably should.
I don't think you had a picture of Jeff here before.
Yeah.
Jeff is the new
addition.
Were you married then, or were you just?
I believe yes, we were married at that point. So probably for only like a year or so.
Okay.
So we came back to visit and we had a big family reunion. So Kevin has posted some stuff on Facebook. I posted this picture on Facebook and Kevin said, "Oh, I have more." So he posted a whole album of them, but this is the one that I found. But this is all of Tom and Marilyn's kids and grandkids before there was any great grandkids. So this is before anybody of these little ones and me started having kids. So as you know, the oldest one I didn't have any children. So but Kelly has 2. Julia and Henri don't have any. Sasha has 2. Sheridan doesn't have any. Zach doesn't have any. Ryan doesn't have any. Thank God. But This is a picture that I think probably the last picture that was taken before the great grandchildren started being born.
Well, and now Jeff Brazel has his hand on Ryan Brown's shoulder. And Ryan Brown is the brother of Christina. And so they are the only two children, again, two children into a family. We're trying to replace ourselves, but don't overdo it. And Ryan, as you say, none of the grandchildren hardly have any children. Now, Kelly has two kids and they live
Yep.
in, but we don't have many great
Yeah,
grandchildren.
Kelly's got two, and then like this, the step granddaughter has two now, Sasha. But like, no, none of the rest of us have had any kids, and that's okay. Here's another picture. This is Tom and Marilyn with their 4 kids in a different spot in life here. So we got Ginger, Dan, Tom, Marilyn, Kevin, and Marie when she had her very, very, very long
No,
hair.
Oh,
Oh, here.
that, yeah, now the picture is showing.
Yeah, here's for Marie. Yeah, Marie over here on the right and Ginger on the left.
Mhm.
And then Dan, the tallest, of course, in the back. And
All with
Kevin-
the red hair. Everybody
all
with the red hair.
I still had red hair in this picture.
All the men are wearing ties, and it must have been a very special
Yeah.
occasion.
I don't know what.
So this is a mixed family picture. I'm not sure. This is Zach on the left.
Can't see it yet, Chrissy.
Oh, sorry. Let me know when you can see it.
There,
Oh.
okay,
Okay,
there it
so
is.
we've got Zach here on the left. We've got Sheridan getting ready to celebrate a birthday, it looks like. Julia giving him the support he needs. Sasha, and then Kelly.
So these are grandchildren, yeah.
Mhm.
But we have just 2 great grandchildren out of all of these kids.
I think that must be at the Hampstead house.
Yeah,
I
I think that's
recognize-
probably right. Yep.
I recognize the table and chairs. It's the one we.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
At our
Um,
house.
We always called Chrissy our 5th child because she was in age, the oldest grandchild. That's Chrissy right there in the middle.
In the
You
middle. Look at
dyed
that
your hair,
waistline.
right?
Look how hot I was. Look at that waistline.
Yeah, right.
Look at the blonde hair.
Right.
I know. I had many colors of hair. Many
No wonder
colors.
Jeff picked her out of the crowd at Batavia High School when she was just a freshman, and he was a senior, right?
Yep.
And he picked her out of the freshman class. And
Yeah, he was a returning senior. So he came back. He had to take a couple extra classes to graduate high school. So he was a senior plus, but he was a military man at that point. So yeah, he did. Yes.
Shortly after you met Jeff and you became a couple pretty quick, he went off into the Army right away. How did that happen? Why did he
That
leave?
was, yeah, it wasn't super quick. So I got together with Jeff, and my parents didn't like the fact that he was so much older than me, and so they started pushing back on that. And you can't see that boy anymore. And of course, you know what a teenage girl does when your parents tell you that. I saw him every day, so that became a problem. And then I ran away from home and ended up getting arrested. Not arrested, but like picked up by the police because I was underage and I wasn't supposed to be hanging out with this older boy. And it turned into, that's how I ended up moving to Colorado. Okay, well, my parents don't want me to come home. They don't want me to see this boy anymore. And I'm going to go and live with my grandparents. And he, at the same time, decided, okay, well, if she's not going to be here anymore, I'm going to join the Army. And so he went from the reserves to the regular Army and ended up in Germany. and I ended up in Colorado, and we kept a long distance relationship for 3 years until we could get me to 18, and then we could get married. So here we are 25 years later, still married.
Very persistent.
And yeah, so back to how he ended up way over in what, Montevideo. It's north of Greece. It was a part of the old Yugoslavia that fell apart when the Soviet Union collapsed, and he was sent over there as a peacekeeper. I think he wore a blue helmet representing the United Nations, trying to keep peace among these warring ethnic groups. They call it the pot boiler of Europe, Yugoslavia, and it was held in a communist dictatorship under an iron fist. They were kept apart, but when that collapsed, they all started fighting one another.
Right.
And Jeff was sent over there to be a peacekeeper, and then he went to Germany.
Well, he was stationed in Germany, and then when that war broke out and there was starting to be unrest, he went and worked from Germany to the UN, and he worked in Macedonia, and he was there to keep the peace. That's what their job was, and so they had to patrol the mountainsides with guns and try to make sure that people weren't crossing the borders from Bosnia, which was the other country that they were dealing with. And yeah, he was there for quite a long time, and it was because he was a medic, he ended up having to stay there longer than the other guys he had to stay there. So he was there and doing peacekeeping stuff. So that's not about marriage though. So let's talk about this next picture, because we're getting kind of long in the tooth on the time here. So
Recognize
so
that.
now,
Yes.
after we did all the kids' marriages, we did all the grandkids' marriages. Now we're doing, so here's Tom and Barbara getting married. Yay! Barbara, your hair looks fantastic in this picture. I just have to say.
Thank you.
I don't
Yes,
know if you had it done or if you did it yourself, but it looks fabulous.
No, I didn't. I went to a hairdresser. And she said she'll make me look pretty for my wedding.
So I imagine this is you guys signing your marriage license. So let's talk about a little bit how marriage was different. So you spent was it 55 years with Grandma,
Yeah.
Marilyn, and then so that marriage has to have been different from your marriage now. So you don't have kids. Well, all your kids are adults now, and they're all moved out of the
We
house.
have
And
8 kids. You never get too old. Your kids are never too old to be your kids.
Right? No, they're still
Yeah.
your kids.
That's why we call you Chrissy.
But it is very different, right? Because they're not, we're not
At
changing
home.
diapers
Yeah,
and
you're not having to
let
care
them
for
to
them.
school and
Right.
everything. So, but we still, they're still our kids.
Yep. Used to have all the kids and they're always welcome, but they're all grown now. So
Right.
it's I imagine this has to be much different experience than both of your marriages early on.
Each one of us, Tom and myself, our kids, when they were almost all of them, ended up coming back home for
Live
a
at
year,
home.
2-3 years
Mhm.
to live. So, while they were still finding their way in life. And so you had kids in your basement and
Oh,
I
yeah,
had kids in my back room and grandkids. And
Grandkids, yep.
now we don't.
Now, we can.
That's all done with now.
But Chrissy was the first to come to live with us, and she was in Loveland, Colorado, and going to high school, graduated from Loveland High, and Jeff was way over in Yugoslavia,
Yep.
Bosnia, and they were separated. The way Marilyn and I were separated, so that she could finish nurse's training, and then we could get married. So we had to postpone our marriage. But you were still pretty young when you got married, Chrissy, right? We called you Chrissy because you were like our fifth child, we called you.
Yes.
Because you lived with us and graduated from high school. But you were really separated from Jeff for quite a long time.
Ivan and I were separated for a year and a half. He graduated college in middle of 57, and we weren't married until the June of 58. He went back to Loveland, and I have letters. We wrote letters like every day, every other day. I have a whole stack of letters, and reading back on, and he saved my letters, I saved his, so I have all of them now. And it's so interesting to read what we were like when we were young. And also, Ivan was older than me. He had been to the Korean War before he went to college, and we met in college. And so he was quite a bit older than me, and I was just really a young thing when I got married. Two weeks after I graduated, we
Yep.
were married in
Yep.
St. Louis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did it. Yeah, exactly the same thing. So there's some things that don't change. There's some things that don't change. Like Jeff and I did that long distance relationship thing, and I would wait at the mailbox every day while the main neighborhood in Hampstead was being built. And so the construction guys were out there building houses across the street, and I was waiting for the mailman to come to bring
Mhm.
letters. So I
Yeah.
could get a letter from, because back then you didn't have, the first thing that we came across, other than letters was, we had these little mini tapes and mini tape recorders. And so we would send each other these mini tapes of us talking to each other, because phone calls were very expensive back then. You couldn't call long distance over to Germany or back and forth. It was very, very expensive. So we would send many tapes and letters, and I'd be waiting at the mailbox every day, just waiting. And it worked out. And as soon as I turned 18, when I could get married, that was what we were waiting for. And he happened to get out of the Army probably 6 weeks after I turned 8, or not get out of the Army. He got posted back to the United States about 6 weeks after I turned 18. So we could jet off out to King County, Illinois, and get our marriage license. And we got married, and then we had to get to his next post, which was in Oklahoma. But yeah, that's a whole nother fun story. I think we've probably already gone over that one. So here is another, we probably need to wrap this up because we've gone pretty long, which is great. This has been a great conversation. But here's another picture of, this is at your guys' wedding. And this is the whole Ryan family. And I don't know that I have another picture of the Engelhart family, but this is
Really? Okay.
everybody that was able to be there.
These are all Ryans, or
Yep.
they're not named Ryan necessarily, but
Right.
they were all, they're all related
Yep.
to the Ryans. And this was at the time of Barbara and my wedding. Barbara and I
Yeah.
at the top of the picture.
Yeah. So this is the two of you.
I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting that all three, we had an Army interference. I was drafted after college, and Ivan went in before college, but we're about the same age, Ivan Engelhart and Tom Ryan. And we both were in the Army during the Korean War, but Ivan really went to Korea to fight, and I luckily got the tail end of it, and it ended as I finished basic training. But we both had to postpone marriages, and you did too, until your loved one got out of the Army. So we all had three ahead. That's kind of an Army thing in our getting back together again.
Definitely differences between everybody's marriage, but also similarities. I believe, over the generations, there's still things that, you have to, sometimes you have to wait, and sometimes you have to do it quick. And I think it has worked out for everybody, like in all their situations, like even like, those who have had more than one marriage, whether it be due to death or other circumstances. I think everybody has really kind of, in our family, at least, gotten through that and and done what we had to do to to get to the point that we need to be in our own lives. So I think we've maintained our individualism throughout.
I think, um, yeah, we all got married, but our second marriage, at first, Barbara and I fell in love, but we thought there'd be all kinds of financial problems with, we each had money and, that we had inherited and saved, and we wanted to keep it separate. And so we were just going to live together. Now, this wouldn't have ever been permitted back when we were young, but we were going to live together in sin, they used to call it, and not get married, but we just like we were married. And you kind of had the same idea, I think, you and Jeff, when you left Colorado after your high school graduation, you were going to live together and not get married. And the Army made you get married because they said, if you don't get married, we won't give you married student housing, married soldier housing. So in order to get a house at Fort Sill, you had to have a marriage license. So you got married. Well, why did we got married? Well, we went to a lawyer and he said, there's no problem. I can fix that up in about 5 minutes. So he filled out some papers so our finances were separate and we could get married. So we did.
Yeah.
So
How easy is that? Different
We
these
have
days.
that in common
And
too.
just one final thing that I just thought of is that each of our families, the Engleharts and the Ryans, were basically very strong families. We came from a heritage of strong families, and through the good times and the bad, we supported each other. And I think that is so important. I think the idea of family strength is really still really important, even though so many things have changed in our society over the decades. But just knowing you're part of a family, it's really important.
Agree 100% on that. And I think we both have very strong families. Like both families they're hardy, man. We got this. And you know where we learned that from? You guys. So thank you very much so much for that.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Thank you, Chris. This is great.
this is
Thank
great.
you. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording and we'll